Um, Hello everyone. This is Jacob Velia, and we're gonna discuss about the topics given of our subject platform technologies for our prelim examination. So let's start. The topics given are CPU architecture, ARM processor architecture, Unix operating system, Linux operating system. So first, let's tackle about CPU architecture. So, CPU architecture. In computer engineering, CPU architecture is a set of rules and methods that describe the functionality, organization, and implementation of computer system. Some definitions of architecture define it as describing the capabilities and programming model of a computer but not a particular implementation. So the word architecture typically refers to building design and construction. The design of the processor determines what software can run on the computer and what other hardware components are supported. So there are two primary processor architectures used in today's environments, and these are 32-bit or times 86 and 64-bit times 86 64, IA64 and AMD 64. These architectures differ in the data path width, integer size, and memory address with that the processor is able to work with. So the example of CPU architectures are the times 86 made by Intel and AMD, Spark made by Sun Microsystems and others, and PowerPC made by Apple, IBM, and Motorola. So next is ARM processor architecture. So an ARM processor architecture is one of a family of CPUs based on the RISC or reduced instruction set computer. This architecture is developed by Advanced RISC Machines or ARM. ARM makes 32-bit and 64-bit RISC multi-core processors. So ARM is a family of reduced reduction set computing architectures for computer processors configured for various environments. So example of ARM processor architecture is that Apple's first Macs with Apple Silicon chips, in the late 2020 MacBook Air, MacBook Pro, and Mac Mini all used M1 chip, which is Apple's first custom designed ARM based chip for Mac. So Unix operating system. So Unix is an operating system. It also it supports multitasking and multi-user functionality. Unix is most widely used in all forms of computing systems such as desktop, laptop, and servers. On Unix, there are graphical user interface similar to Windows that support easy navigation and support environment. So, what devices uses Unix operating system? So, the devices that uses Unix operating system is that are Linux, Mac OS X, Android, iOS, Chrome OS, Orbis OS used on PlayStation 4. Whatever firmware is running on your computer, all of these operating systems are often called Unix-like operating system. So the main features of Unix are it gives multitasking and multi-user programming interface. It can also use it can also use as for programmers, and use of files and abstractions of device and other objects. Built-in network TCP/IP is standard. Persistent system service process called daemons and managed by init or inet. So Linux operating system. Linux is very familiar to us, right? So I'm gonna give you a quick refresher of Linux operating system. So Linux-based system is a modular Unix-like operating system, deriving much of its basic design from principles established in Unix during 1970s and 1980s. Such as such a system uses a monolithic kernel, the Linux kernel, which handles process control networking access to the peripherals and file system. So, Linux is a family of open source Unix-like operating system based on Linux kernel, an operating system kernel first released on September 17, 1991 by Linus Torvalds. Linux is typically packaged in a Linux distribution. So Linux has been the basis of commercial network devices, but now it's a mainstay of enterprise infrastructure. Linux is a tried and true open source operating system released in 1991 for computers, but its use has expanded to underpin system for cars, phones, web servers, and more recently networking gear. So Linux facilitates with powerful supports for networking. The client-server systems can be easily set to a Linux system. It provides various command line tools such as SSH, IP, mail, telnet, and more for connectivity with the other system and servers. Tasks such as network backup are much faster than others. So, these are some examples of stable Linux distros. So, Debian suitable for beginners, Fedora suitable for software developer and students. Linux Mint are also suitable for professionals, developers, and also students. Manjaro suitable for beginners. OpenSUSE suitable for beginners and advanced users. Tails suitable for security and privacy. Ubuntu, Zorin OS. So based on my understanding, Ubuntu and Zorin OS is suitable for just like OpenSUSE, so advanced users. So that's all. Hope you learned something about my report. Thank you and keep safe.